The other thing I do really is my intention in life is to make this world a more loving place.
Nirupama, you were born to do this job. You were born to help women.
Or you're being called like chaplusi types.
It is leading to is a lot of clashes, and that leads to the divorce rates going up.
Sometimes you are God's hand in that person's life.
She is called aggressive, not assertive. She is called over ambitious and not a leader, an ambitious leader. The role of making of the leaders. So let me ask you a very important question, which I definitely ask all my viewers, and that is in my pitch. Hello, all, and welcome to In Me, my podcast, which is all about you. It talks about what's unique about you that makes you you. And In Me came to me as a spark. Actually, a transformative journey wherein In Me was born, and it was absolutely a universal calling. With this universal calling, I also had a guest who was a universal calling to me when I was clicking away, and I got to meet Dr. Rachna Patni. Welcome, Dr. Rachna Patni. You're looking beautiful.
Thank you. So are you, and so is this background.
Thank you. So, thank you. Thank you for that. And just a little bit about your background to introduce to our viewers who you are. I'm sure you would add more to it, but I am amazed with the kind of background and the kind of, the kind of professional degree she has. So, Dr. Rachna Patni has a strong, noteworthy academic background with professional degrees in social psychology from the London School of Economics. I'm sure everybody eye to go there, and Social Welfare Administration from TISS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Her PhD in management studies was called Emotional Fools and Dangerous Robots, and that was the point which intrigued me. And I was like, why this line? And I wanted to talk to you about it. So, from here, can I take it up? Why this very unique theme?
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the time that we're going to spend together just examining ideas about me, because the word me seems to be relevant to you and to me in our work.
Yes.
The whole idea of emotional fools and dangerous robots was something that emerged from my PhD interviews. So I did over 40 qualitative interviews with like internationally placed people working in international NGOs, and the the overwhelming story that kept coming up for me was that when it came to how people experience and navigate emotion in organizations, a lot of the time in the stories of women, I would find that they were feeling too much, and they were often attending meetings, and then later on they were being told by their friends or well-wishers that you were emotionally foolish there, that was an emotionally foolish thing to have done. And I could see that these were highly competent women who had lost the chance to influence and inform decision making because they had fallen for being emotional fools. And on the other hand, were the was the other story of what I have called the dangerous robots, because these are also stories from organizations, and mostly they applied to men in my interviews. But I think as women engage more and more in masculine ways in organizations, this applies across gender. But it is that when a person becomes so disconnected from their true feeling that they only want to feel what the organization wants them to feel when they're doing something. So they have no connection to the job. And especially if you think of international organizations, there's often a vocational calling because of which you're doing something. And it's about well being, and it's about, development. So to have completely lost the emotional connect to why you're doing what you're doing, and to only convenient for your organization to have. requires a deep level of disconnection within.
Mm.
So, in both these cases, Emotional Fools and Dangerous Robots, my understanding was that both categories of organizational actors had lost sense of what is their true emotional compass. And they were either being swamped in one direction or the other.
Hmm.
So that's how I came up with this name.
Wow, brilliant. And I think hats off to your observations because I'm sure at that stage when you had picked this up, I'm sure I'm sure there are more examples to talk about as compared to what it is now. But for the age you were in, I'm sure this was absolutely an amazing topic to talk about, and many would have resonated and yet not talked about it, you know. And still people don't get this, you know, that we are emotional fools at many most of the times. And then when we realize that time has passed away, so, listening to you, what I understand is women and men, they both work very differently in the office setup. And as I heard you, that, you know, women come with feelings and men have their own different way of looking at the job and the strategic way, rather, at looking at the job. And sometimes they are dangerous to us because we don't understand how to go about it. So, with this question, you know, and there's so much more to ask on these levels, but there's one thing which I would definitely want to ask now is in me is all about me. What about what is in me that makes me unique? So, what is it that makes you unique?
So for me, me came from the matrix of emotions and the matrix of inquiry. So the word matrix itself means womb, and it comes from mother and matter. Now,
Mm,
these are all feminine words, but when we think of the matrix now, it is seen as something technical or technological. So for me, working with the word matrix and therefore working with the idea of the womb and creation and the maternal and the material, all of
mm,
these things which are often undervalued in our society, but that they are at the base of our existence, and
mm,
emotion is also undervalued, especially in organizational contexts and elsewhere. Rationality is always seen as being somehow higher than emotionality, and feminine is seen as lower than masculine. So it was all of these ideas that made me choose me. So because I am embodied as a woman and I am interested in navigating my emotions. So I value everything that has been undervalued. And so it's a way of valuing myself as well. And that's how the word me came up.
wow. And I think similarly, on the same grounds, when I was looking at in me, it was exactly, you know, what is that transformative journey I have gone through? And you know, somewhere when my mentor was talking to me, he's Gopal Krishnan, he said, Nirupama, you were born to do this job. You were born to help women break the glass ceiling and make them different, make them feel absolutely on top of their, you know, best, or as well as, you know, there's something in you which makes you different, and that in me was born. So thank you. I think it so correlates well, but I think I like the word metrics of emotions, which are undervalued, and empathy is one of the biggest piece, and rationality always overtakes it. So where do these emotion and rationality meet now? Now that men are also evolved when it comes to emotion piece.
So as you're talking about like the masculine and the feminine and the evolution that each individual goes through, but also then as a result, our society is going through an evolution where
Hmm.
things which were earlier undervalued or seen as not good enough, we are now able to appreciate the contribution of those very things. And that's going to keep evolving and changing. So, in our world today, more and more, it's important that we are able to hold emotional and rational together and
Hmm.
recognize that the sense making that comes from that weaving is far superior to one in which we are either on one or on the other. So this, in psychology, especially in Carl Jung's ideas, there's the idea that as you grow as a human being, your masculine and your feminine capabilities come together, and you go beyond being the
Mm,
masculine or the feminine.
mm,
And this journey applies to both men and women equally. Now, especially in the Indian context, the organizational socialization of women has been a far shorter time period compared to men. So, women come into the workplace with very often no women in their family having had to navigate the workspace. So, they have the organization in their head is, let's say, a joint family or a nuclear family. And
mm,
it is the authentic connections with your mother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and how do you navigate those? So those are the implicit things that women have navigated, and then they come into an organization which is a completely different world, and then we try and use the logic of the joint family in navigating a completely different world, whereas the men have already learned so much of this in what's called their habitus, just their way of being. They have recognized a lot of things.
yeah.
So things like decisions are rarely ever made in meetings. They are already made, done and dusted, and then the conversation is had in the meetings for the purposes of minuting it. Now, something like this, most women never digest this till they have burnt themselves at a meeting,
Sure.
or kind of melted themselves into tears, and then realize that didn't matter how well their argument was presented,
Mm,
how factually accurate or relevant it was, but they had not built the strategic alliances in advance or recognized what is the organization really moving towards. So it's this kind of thing that women have to understand, that they are playing in an organizational playing field, and that it's a very different context.
yeah.
And the men have to allow themselves to evolve with the idea of what it means to be authentic, because the organization also needs to keep growing.
Mm,
So this is a positive thing for an organization to meet women who are being emotional and are challenging men to sort of think, oh my God, can you feel so much about work? And how to go from there. Yeah.
mm. True. I think what I'm picking up are many stories which are just going behind my mind while you were speaking about. And as you said, there are many decisions which are made during those fag breaks when men take, or when you take a break from a meeting and you are busy, maybe solving some home problem on the phone, or you're going to the washroom just to get few things done, because some women are so obsessed of looking good while some are so obsessed of just getting some work done. Between the two extremes, somebody in a fag meeting outside the office has already taken a decision for the position you're eyeing for. Now, this is so common. So, what is it that men have to be trained on, or what is it that the leaders have to look into so that, there's a change in behavior in the society of men in the office?
So, one is that, when this becomes common knowledge, it will begin to lose its power.
Hmm.
So, what happens is when you're like a hapless, unaware woman in a context where the stage is known to everybody else, that's when it can be a very lopsided experience for women. But as women get socialized into what does it mean to attend a meeting and how is it that decisions are made, then first of all, they will not be holding themselves preparing only for this meeting. They
Hmm.
will also start making tracks prior to the meeting, getting a pulse of what really is the right decision, what kind of alliances already exist. So this whole thing of networking prior to the actual event is something that women need to learn.
Hmm.
And you're very right that currently, in the organization, all the natural ways in which it happens are not so easily accessible to women. And of course, the cigarette break is one idea, but also if you're going out networking with drinks in the evening. So there are all these kind of subtle boundaries that women find harder to cross over, and therefore they can get left out. So it's really important to create networking opportunities which suit women. And
Mm.
where so even this the socialization is so poor that when women go for networking events, they don't really recognize that it's really their time to pick these flowers which they're going to carry home with themselves.
Yes.
They just see it as a place to be seen, and they don't recognize that it's a time for harvest. So it's these kind of ideas which need to become much more commonly known by women. And when we look at very old research as well, like even the 1940s, a lot of these things have been written about in books and research papers, but they are not yet a part of our lived reality as women in the workplace. So this would be one thing, from the women's perspective. From the men's perspective, I think, or from the organization's perspective, if organizations are predominantly with a masculine logic, then the change will be slower than what can happen if one woman decides to become aware about all of these things. The change in her life will be much faster. Um, but if we all keep waiting for the organization to take the lead in changing, that's often the slower route. And that will also only come about when enough women have kind of become aware of where is it that they are supposed to be functioning and what are the tools and resources they have there.
Yep, like I understand where you're coming from, but the irony of your statement is, so if a woman takes that courage and gets into that networking meeting, and even let's consider that she's good and she understands that I'm here, I should just do the work I'm meant for, which generally we are very clear. We're not going there for lunch or dinner. If you're going there, that means we need to get some work done. So if you're pitching in that networking meeting and making yourself visible, they do not come across as a leader, but they come across as, oh, she's an opportunistic, now she's making ways to get things done. So the mentality around, and even if it is, and I'm not talking of men, even women to women would think like this. And that's where the whole disconnection is. Even if that one woman which you're talking of who breaks that barrier, she is not given that due respect. She is called
So,
aggressive, not assertive. She is called over ambitious and not a leader, an ambitious leader. She's not called as a disruptor, a one who is leading the way for women, but as oh, she's just trying to be over smart. So all these tags, somewhere deplete us. They just demotivate us, and then again you need somebody, or you just go away from that, or you just leave that job, and you go to another organization, or you just do something on your own. So there's too many barriers, don't you think so?
so this is really important. When does what we hear outside become our internal prison? You know,
Yes.
and that's another place where, because women have been often socialized to seek approval,
Mm,
we can get quite caught up in these kind of things. Whereas the men, you know, all this is like water off a duck's back.
true.
Not that they don't get all of this, but they have that thick skin, a resilience, which is about knowing who they are. And so just anything they hear on the outside is not going to,
Impact.
make them lose their focus. So they're very focused, they're very consistent and very persistent. And women are bound to receive all of this. And unfortunately, in the beginning, the change has to happen at an individual level.
Mm,
We can keep hoping that the world becomes a better place, but it only happens when each one of us is able to filter out from our context the things that do not serve us. And this thing, like we literally have to go in with a jharu, with a broom,
True.
you know, and you have to know what is the garbage that you are not going to give a mental shelf. So
Hmm.
whether you're being called flirtatious because you have a way of making connect, or you're being called like chaplusi types, or, there are so many
Yeah.
words which are demeaning. But then, um, there is also a way in which in our lives we take up what is, just as I was saying, whatever is undermined, you take it up and you see it in a new light, so
Hmm.
that you no longer let those things control you and limit you. So you have to step into your own limitlessness.
Wow. Well said. And once again, for the viewers, for all the women and even men who are listening to both Dr. Rachna Patni and me, we are in this discussion, and I think we all have to play a role, the role of, making of the leaders. Men have a bigger role. If you can foresee and understand what's happening around them, why not? Why not support that one woman who is in the office who would make to the top? So as men, you have a responsibility, and we definitely have many men who have groomed us also. As we look back to our careers, they have done such great things and ensure that we are going up. But yes, the point I like about this book I read, Chetan Bhagat, I don't read very often, but one book I read about him, and that line I never miss out. All men are happy till you are progressing and you are achieving below them. The moment you cross them and their position, and that's where you're not their part, then they won't then recognize you, they would not be the same. You agree this? What do you think about this?
I have a mixed response to this. I don't think it's always the truth.
Mm,
Uh, Now, it could be because my whole emphasis is that before we want to change the other, we have to examine and see what is it in us that needs to change. Now, while, politically it can be dismissed that I'm only trying to change the women, but actually I see that as a place where change can happen. So what happens is that if women begin to embody too much of the masculine energy, and then they start playing the game better than the men even, then provided they can have a light approach towards their own success, and which is what women often tend to lose. So as women progress in the organizational hierarchy, and again I'm making generalized statements, but I intend to speak some general truths which cannot be spoken unless I paint a general picture.
true.
So a lot of the women tend to become, too superior or higher than thou, and like matriarchs of certain sorts who are not open, and they become dictatorial in their own approach as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, how are you then paving the way forward for a new way of leadership, because actually you have taken the negative aspects of both and gone ahead, so in that sense, what happens is that as women progress, they also tend to alienate others. and
Mm,
um, and again, this is not to blame women as much as to say that these are all new things happening in the organizational life of women worldwide. So these are new things, new experiences, and we will only learn by going to the extremes, and then reaching a balance. So it's also part and parcel of the evolution of our role in organizations. And
yeah.
we will only perfect it in time, but right now
Mm,
we will have these extreme manifestations, so we can see, oh, I don't want to be like that, or yes, I want to be like that,
mm. True, true, true. You know what it is? The discussion is actually evolving into a very important aspect of the society. So while women want to go on the top, what they are picking up is traits of men. So what's happening is they are becoming men in the journey of, reaching the top of the ladder. So now what happens when they come back home? Once one is a father coming back home, and then a mother who is now a man coming back home, or in a way, two fathers are coming back home. So what she needs is a woman for herself, giving a cup of tea when she arrives. So thanks for the helpers around us here in India, at least. But what it is leading to is a lot of clashes, and that leads to divorce rates going up.
So, these are very difficult things to talk about because as soon as we make a statement which is supposed to be very tentative and it is supposed to mark out what are we losing when we see success as only like this masculine ways of leading and getting to the top, we are losing a lot of things. So I'm going to draw upon in the last month. Something really strange happened. I went to a London School of Economics reunion, and for some reason, I asked my husband to come along with me because it was open to family, friends, and spouses. So he said he'd come with me, and then we both went together. And the meal was really fun. But after that, I've had three women reach out to me, and what they want to ask me is, how did you find a husband who supports you? That's all they were interested in out of this networking event from a London School of Economics meeting. And I realized that in the tug of war for success and leadership, we are very often losing companionship. And we are moving towards loneliness, which is an extremely depleting thing, and we don't know sometimes whether lack of success is more depleting than extreme loneliness. So it's like this whole thing of a life in balance, and currently we have very few opportunities to witness that.
Mm. I think there's a big societal web which is around all this discussion. And the more we talk, there's so many more things evolving around it. But moving ahead, one piece which I definitely look forward in the coming days is a lot of compassion, women coming back to their nurturing stage and men recognizing it, as well as women also understanding that what they have to change is that fear, the self doubts, and the worries they have. They have to just let go of that and just be them. And that would make all the difference. At the end of the day, we have to shower the love in the relationship so that that companionship is, much stronger, and that loneliness is off. Being alone and being lonely are two different things, but I think that loneliness is growing. So thank you. I think this makes so much sense. So let me ask you a very important question, which I definitely ask all my viewers, and that is in my pitch. So in my pitch, what is it that you do and you would like your viewers to know about your work, which will make a difference in their life and their leadership journey too? So over to you.
Thank you. So what I do, I do various different things, but really my focus is on enabling people to know what is their, uh, authentic decision about things. So this requires emotional clarity along with other kinds of commitment to different action points in your life.
Mm.
Uh, so I've developed a process, with 100 cards, which is called the Pack of Me,
Okay.
and it is a process where out of 100 cards, the person intentionally picks up only one card, and we do a session based on the meaning of that card for that person's emotional priorities at that point in their life. And this can be a really good way of decluttering what matters and what doesn't matter in terms of taking decisions in your life. So at any kind of crossroad, you are able to tune into your truth, to your priorities, and do something about it.
Wow.
The other thing I do really is, my intention in life is to make this world a more loving place, because love is the only force that is a gentle force. And it is more powerful than anything else we know, because it's the most transformative ingredient in our world. And so how do we increase love? And first we do it also by being able to love ourselves, which requires us to be able to silence our inner critic.
Mm.
So each time we see ourselves as, any of the words that we use to dismiss and minimize others, it's like becoming aware that we got to stop doing it to ourselves and to other people. So the harshness that comes from the critic is something we need to really let go of. And the second thing is that we need to really learn to let go of grief. And so in my work with leaders, a lot of the work around anxiety and decision making often involves revisiting aspects of their life where they have really encountered deep grief, and which goes beyond sadness. And
Mm.
when that has not been adequately dealt with, then it really colors the perception of life, the experience of your opportunities, and your experience of what is possible for you. So, letting go of grief in a very conscious way can really pave the world, which can be more loving and more joyful in and out of organizations.
Wonderful. What a great way to look at the world as well as your journey of showering love, making people understand what love is all about and what powerful love is. And recently, it's a great timing for us to, it's a divine time for both of us to come here, because while this Nirupama you're saying it's a changed Nirupama because I got in connect with one of the mentor, as I said, Gopal Krishnan, and his one piece is while he is saying it's so easy to earn money, you can just get 10 crores per month also. But what's more important is, are you showering love to people around? And you know what? He is role modeling that. And by showering love, he's showing how money is coming effortlessly. And that connection gave me that ah moment. And now when you say this, say exactly the same thing in your words, I understand it so well. But it is so difficult for people to understand because we are full of egos. The moment we shed our egos, you can see the human in other person, and every person who is so egoistic is so insecure, is so scared, is like so having so much of self doubt. The moment you shed off your ego, you can actually see the other person's situation, and you can be more loving to them.
This is so important because in all our lives, we are encouraged to project to the world that we are somehow different, unique, and special.
Mm.
But what if what's unique about us is that we are all one?
We're
You
all
know, and that recognition of that fabric of humanity that connects us all and gives shape to our experiences. And I especially over COVID and after, I started really believing in this one line which came to me like out of the blue, and it is that when you can help another person, sometimes you are God's hand in that person's life.
true.
So when we are looking for God, we forget that we can all be the active agents of God. So that's something that I find really meaningful, and I see people in places of power, well networked men, for example, who really go out of their way to make that one phone call when I've asked a query or something like that, and how much that opens up the world for me. And it's a simple task for them, but it's so meaningful, and that we all need to keep paying it forward.
Yes, well said. And I think there's so many examples of leaders who have showered love and made the changes, revolutionary changes. The top one which comes to me is Nelson Mandela. The kind of examples, the way he has gone through the jail tortures, and then still the love to the jailer. And he was sitting right in the first row when he was being awarded, and that made me think, how much love Nelson Mandela had showered on him, that he didn't hate that person, who tortured him like mad, crazy. But yeah, that those are extreme cases. But yes, I love the word. We are God's agent, and we all have to shower love to each other. And that brings me to the last part of the question as to while we have talked about challenges of women, we have talked about so many things interwoven. One thing for all the mothers who have son and even daughters, what is it that we can, inbuilt right now, which will slightly make them more agents of love, make women a little more me, means a woman not with feelings, but a human going to the office or going to any area, maybe managing her home, so that this world is a beautiful society.
So with all our relationships, this is very old wisdom, which I think each one of us starts to recognize it in our own lives. And it hits us at some point that the people in your life, they are not there to represent you. They are not there to show that you are successful, or to demonstrate your effectiveness in this world. They are here to be themselves. So the more we can allow our children to just be themselves without seeing their qualities and achievements as if it represents us, and therefore trying to mold them and push them and shove them to become something, so that we feel that we have done a good job. So our challenge as parents, whether for boys or for girls, is to become so accepting and loving, that they can be themselves without the fear that they need to be something in order to be loved. So
Mhm.
it's that very basic sense of a nourishment that love provides in your very early days, where then you have the courage to disagree, you have the courage to stand your ground, because you know that you can do that and you will still be loved.
True. Sorry, parenting, I think, is altogether a different ball game and a discussion of one more podcast. But yes, I think this brings to an end that there are so many things which we can pick up. I'll just pick up few points which I loved. Like one which came out to me is women becoming more masculine. So in case you can recognize that it's not about being masculine in the office setup, but it's just being you and breaking barriers. I also understand that massive actions they are taking, but they are just doing the task and coming back home. Take massive actions which would increase the profitability of the organization, and you will get your recognition. Just don't do the task, just keep doing the task is not the reason. So that's one. Second, I've picked up is networking. Go for networking meetings and remember why you are there, why you are there, what is the reason you're going for the networking. So just get clarified, and what your surrounding is saying, whether you're aggressive, you're ambitious, or some demeaning things, just don't listen to them, just listen to your inner voice, because you are different and you understand that environment doesn't uh, shape you. Third piece which I'm picking up is let go of grief, and because that's very important, and don't be a victim to yourself, rather conquer it, move ahead. It's difficult, but move ahead, create a village, and ensure that you are loving everyone in the process while you are going through the grief. It's tough, but then yes, that's what the society is all about, and we have a moral responsibility in getting those divorces rate down, ensure that the kids grow in a loving environment, because once you have a child, it's a project of 25 years. You have to manage it. 18 years maybe for outside India, but for us, at least minimum 25 years. So thank you, and many more to pick up. There's so many more to pick up. So thank you,
The,
Rachna.
the only thing about divorces is that as we go through this kind of transformation, it's totally fine if that's what happens. But
Yes.
you still have to um, keep in mind the well-being of the child. And then there are many parents who are doing extremely hard work to ensure that that happens, because uh, in when society is changing, there are bound to be these fissures, and it's okay. Like, we can all survive individually as well. It's important to choose what you can live with.
Mhm. True. Wow, what a great discussion it was in me. So thank you, Dr. Rachna Patni. And this was Dr. Rachna, who, with her wealth of wisdom, has talked about so much in she has actually deep dived into so many topics. And I really don't want you to let go of. But yes, this meeting definitely calls for an end. But I think it's a continuation for our part two. And we will definitely continue one more discussion with you in coming times.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Rashna, for coming over. In Me is all about us. In Me is all about you, all those who are watching us and listening us. So thank you, everybody. In Me, and In Me is all about you. What makes you unique? Thank you for watching. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye. Thank you, Rashna, Dr. Rashna. Bye bye.